What's going on, everyone? John Gillen here with Silver Sound Guitar, and today we're doing part 2 of my Legato Technique videos. So if you haven't checked out the first one, be sure to do that. As always, like, subscribe, all the other fun stuff. But let's jump into it. Last time, we talked a little bit about the basic technique of really focusing on getting those hammer-ons and those pull-offs. But today, I wanted to give you a couple of exercises and a few extra things to think about as you begin to build your legato technique. Of course, one of the things we're always trying to do is work this for speed. So as I always say, start slow, go fast, and clean. And the first thing I want to do today is just go ahead and give you an introduction to one of the things that's really important when it comes to your legato playing, and that's the frame of your hand and making sure that you anticipate that next move. And let me show you what I mean by that. So for this first exercise I've got here, it's in the description. You can go ahead and click on it. It's called Descending Legato for Your Weakness. And the reason I've called it this is because everybody's weakness is their pinky. And so this gives us a really nice opportunity to think about the frame of our hand. And what I mean by that is exactly where it is on the fretboard and how it's shaped. We don't want to be here because a lot of times what happens with the pinky is now out of alignment and we don't get a clean hammer-on or a clean pull-off. So remember, go back, check out that first video. I talk a little bit about getting that finger in the right position so that ultimately what happens is the fingers are pulling down into the hand, not off to the side one way or the other like that. And we're not just kind of slapping them on and off. Remember, it's a pull-off, not a lift-off. Now in this first one, it starts right here on the 7th fret, and this is all just kind of based around what would be a B Lydian scale, but you can think about it in a couple of different ways. So here we're going to start on just that note. We want that simple pull off, but notice what comes next. This is a big part of your legato playing, is thinking about what comes next. After I do this pull off, I have to be prepared to land on this note right here. So I want to have that pinky in a position where I can think about it and I know what's coming next. So here we go. I'm going to start here with that pull off. And now I'm already anticipating that next note. For some of you out there, it might be worth breaking this down. Instead of trying to play this whole exercise all the way through, take chunks of it and work on playing chunks of it slow, fast, clean. So start with just that transition. And the whole point of that is that you build up that dexterity and you start training your pinky to anticipate the change across the strings. Now, I also do this with the 3rd finger as well as we descend. So let's go into that next part, and I'll take it nice and slow here. So we're going to start with... Okay, that's a good place to start for you if you haven't done a lot of legato work, particularly descending across the strings. Notice again, I'm anticipating where that pinky's going to be. By the time I'm here though, I'm already starting to think about landing on that 8th fret. Now what happens is I'm going to come back up. Okay, so just that much. If I go... Okay, I want to work on anticipating each little section and keep this finger here. Notice how I'm keeping that first finger down, this finger right here. And now I can go, and now that pinky is already anticipating the move I need to make beforehand. Same thing by the time I get to the 5th fret here. And now that pinky's anticipating the 6th string as well. So each one of those steps, I'm starting to think about where does that pinky need to be and how do I get there? And that's really the big part of this that I'm trying to drive home. To build speed in your legato playing, you have to think about what's coming next and how do you position your hand accordingly. So I've got a couple of other legato exercises here for you that help with some of these framing ideas. And the first one I want to look at, this one's also in the tabs if you click that link, it's going to be measure 8. And this is basically just a G major scale ascending and then descending in these legato patterns. So we're going across these 3-octave shapes, or 2-octave shapes rather, and we'll just kind of check that out. So right here, this is a tricky one because it's really going to force us to think about a stretch. Now, a lot of times when we stretch, I'm going to show you just kind of what we end up doing is we end up kind of bending our wrist like this. Things really get out of place, really get out of whack, and it kind of causes us to not get good technique. We end up straining the pinky. Notice here, if I end up doing that, my elbow's way back. Now the pinky's kind of flat. Gosh, that's really hard to pull. Okay, so if you watch a lot of modern players, you'll notice they like to get that guitar neck way up high, right? So what we're gonna try to do is get that in a position where I can actually play that a little bit smoother and it becomes a little bit easier. So notice here, I know you can't see the fretboard right now, but I want you to see my wrist. That's really what we want to see. The wrist is nice and flat. You'll find that relaxes your hand. And then when you notice my thumb position here, you'll notice that thumb right there is just hanging out real gentle right behind my fingers. It's not off to the side. It's not kind of cocked like this. It's not coming over the top. To get these big stretches, it's real important that you kind of keep that wrist relaxed and keep that hand relaxed. So in order to do that, like I said, we typically have to shift the neck up, drop that shoulder, and kind of push that elbow a little bit forward. You'll be able to see it a little bit better from over here. So if I can do this, now we can see how that wrist is going to be flatter, and I'm going to be able to play that a little bit smoother. So you might find you need to adjust the neck up or back, but again, trying to keep that wrist straight, those hands relaxed. So that exercise, we're going to go ahead and play through that real quick. It's just going to go like this. And that's just the pattern. And we're going to end on that C just because it's fun. So one more time. Now, ideally, you want to start being able to build some speed with that, right? So we'll try that a little bit faster. And then just kind of keep working that up. The next thing that you'll see is essentially the descending version of this. And again, we're also still working on the frame of where that hand needs to be. So notice when I was doing this pattern, that's the shape, the frame of the hand. Then it shifts while I'm doing that first finger, second finger, fourth finger, and then I'm gonna shift again as I use the third finger. So same thing's gonna apply here. And notice when we do that pull off, I've got to anticipate where that pinky's gonna go. Everything's coming together here, folks. And then we can keep going down. Cool. It's always a good idea to kind of combine these exercises, play them together, build some speed, really start pushing so that you're able to add the speed element of these exercises with your regular playing. Now, naturally, it's going to be a little bit difficult to just take what we're talking about right now and add that strictly to your playing. Partly because it's not the easiest thing to do exactly an exercise like this, and then to go ahead and move it into your everyday improvisation. So start by taking small chunks. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 strings at a time. You can kind of take it and maybe just play a small section of something where you can just something like that, which is always kind of nice. One that I always like to do is something like that. Makes it nice and easy to kind of combine those scale patterns into something that's relatively easy to wrap your head around and relatively easy for people to listen to and check out. So I've left a whole bunch of other exercises on here as well, but there is one other one I want to mention for you guys. And this one is based around really more of a pentatonic scale. And you'll find this one when you scroll down. This is on measure 21. And yeah, there's a lot of them, so you should definitely check them out. But it starts pretty simply right here in the middle of the fretboard. Gives you a great place to start. If you're familiar with your A minor pentatonic scale, this is it. Pretty simple, okay? So what this exercise does, all more of the same things. Really anticipate your moves. We're going up a string, back a string. It's really common as far as like Jimmy Page's pentatonic runs go. So if you're really into Led Zeppelin, this is a good example of kind of how he thinks about these scale and legato runs that he plays. So it starts here. We've got a pull off on the 7th fret to the 5th fret, and then we're going to that 8th fret, and then a hammer on. And this is a good spot too. Again, if you're just kind of new to it, break these exercises up into really small chunks. So even just this much. One more time, and good. And now from here we can go. Okay, cool. So there's a lot of cool things that we can build on here as we just kind of keep going through that whole exercise. There's also the descending portion of it here. And this includes a string skip, which is always fun. Kind of ends on that G, which is a little goofy, but it's a fun one to play through. So definitely worth it. Check it out. I think when you're playing through something like this, there's kind of a cool element of just being able to play around with it and get some neat ideas just based on these things. So at any rate, I think this is super informative. There's a lot of little things to think about here. Think about your hand position. Think about anticipating what comes next. Work on building speed, which of course we'll talk a little bit more about that in another episode. But for now, this is all great material. You've got loads of exercise to work on. Break them up into small, manageable chunks in order to make sure that you're clean and accurate, but then you're also building speed. Even if it's in a tiny little, 3-note span, progress is progress, So keep that in mind as you're working through these, and we will see you next time.